So good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Maxine Chan from InfraPrime. I am your webinar event lead today. I hope everyone is healthy during the challenging times when we are unable to get together in person and our world has gone virtual. Thank you so much to those who are joining us today's webinar. Just before we begin, I'd like to let you know all our webinar sessions are recorded and available on demand. So if you want to come back to watch again later, or if you like to tell a colleague of this session, you're always very welcome to go to our website, which is www.info-prime.com to request for the on-demand sessions. And you can also get access to our summer series of net zero webinars of the slides and the recording. Please bear in mind, you will be muted as a webinar participant. But don't worry, if you have any questions, you can always type in the Q&A box, and there's no need to wait till the end. Just send in your questions or remarks to us. Susanna and the speakers will respond to you, and of course, myself, I will make sure we get back to you if we run out of time in the end. Now, please allow me to introduce you to our webinar host and moderator for today's Net Zero webinar, Susanna Kass. She is a member of Climate 50, the topmost influencer of climate change leader. She is a computer scientist. She has over 25 years of data center experience. She managed a distributed team of 3,000 people in data center design and site selection. She and her team built and operated over 200 megawatts of data centers across 17 countries. As the CEO at eBay International, General Manager for HP Asia Pacific Data Center Operation, and Vice President for the Global Data Center Business Operations for Sun Microsystems. Concurrently, she worked in the energy sector for over 11 years, including Next Era Energy. She negotiated over 2 gigawatts of renewable energy power purchase agreement with her data center customers, which includes Microsoft, Google, Equinix, Facebook, Walmart, Acme, Goldman Sachs. She's very passionate about climate change. She is a data center advisor for the United Nations Sustainable Development Program, and she's also an energy fellow at Stanford University. And of course, I myself work daily with her in sustainable environmental and material research. Now, let's give a virtual welcome to Susanna Kass. Hi, Susanna.
Hi, Maxine. Thank you for having us today. I'm calling in from Silicon Valley, California this morning. And again, thank you for all of you joining us today and to all our speakers. Just like Maxine said, please do use the Q&A toggle at the bottom of the platform screen when you actually have a question. We will answer your question live and don't have to wait till the end. Today's topic is very interesting to me and very dear to my heart. I have a very good friend, a customer, and someone I highly put in regard in terms of all the lessons I learned in energy and data center is Jim Collins from Microsoft. He will take us through the journey of carbon negative pledge and what does it really work above and beyond all the media you read. And I saw all your notes sending in to me earlier. And I think you will be treated with Jim, who is really hands-on to walk us through the journey and the organization that he's in charge. So data center can be summed up in one word throughout my 25 years of experience. And that one word is resilient. We care about uptime of what we call 5.9, which is 99.999%. And I learned that all from actually working with pioneers such as Microsoft in Megascale and other hyperscaler. We shall be discussing how we actually going to achieve both resilience and sustainable with our 3 industry energy experts who are actually calling in from Switzerland, Dr. Alberto Ravagni from InfraPrime and Olivier Bucheli from Solid Power. And joining us back, definitely one of the experts in terms of renewable fuel, Bryan Batson from Southern Gas. We saved the best for last for Bryan. And the importance of it all is data center has been a beneficiary of the COVID-19 pandemic in form of growth. Microsoft told us 75 million active users are on Teams every day. Zoom has a 400% growth for the consecutive 4 months as every event has actually gone virtual. We are not expecting to slow down our virtual engagement. Sometimes I felt like we all have experienced fatigue from being Zooming all day. This is the proof because you all out there has an average of, I would guess, anywhere between at least 3 to 7 devices that you keep it on, whether you do it to work, to learn, to play, or to interact with each other, so we can all just feel a little bit more connected while we are in home. As the data centers, we are continuing to actually build and plant every day. $1 billion are being spent on materials alone to build a data center. And each megawatt hour we consume are costing millions of energy, which is why we put together the webinar that we have today. Take a look from this list of many of the clients they interact with. And it is wonderful news for me to share with you that not just the people on this list, but there are more coming. And I have another version already building up, have already committed to 100% renewable energy commitment. Following the ambition, for example, Microsoft has led us. So ambition matters, but execution is what counts. So in addition to that, I do want to share with you why you wanted to listen today. I am seeing a trend again. This is disruptive innovation. We are going to see this clean energy transitioning happening in this era, right in front of us in what I call a new energy economy. The pricing of renewable are continue to be dropping down. Jim is an expert in actually be able to track that across with his organization. So without further ado, I wanted to then turn it over to Jim. You can read about his background, and I think I'm just going to go say a few words. Jim is one of the person that Microsoft is very, very happy that he decided to join. For all the years he's been there, I guess it's going on to 12 or 13 or 14 years. I think we start losing count, Jim, in terms of all the work that you've done and how long you've been there. He has reinvented the entire organization that he has actually managed for the energy market. Last year was absolutely a pleasure that Jim and I were in San Francisco together at the Data Center Dynamics in San Francisco. And when he shared with the team on what he anticipates that is happening in 2020, it is actually exactly is happening, and he got a standing ovation. So I know he's going to do it again, especially this year start off so excellent in terms of his leaders talking about meeting a carbon negative pledge. So without further ado, Jim, please take it away.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you for the very, very kind words as always. Here, let me pull up my screen. Okay. And can you see my screen? I'm just want to double check.
Yes, we can see your screen perfectly.
Okay, great, thank you. And so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to kind of be on this panel with all these experts. And again, thank you for the very kind words, Susanna. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate our partnership that we've created over the last several years. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of kind of my role within Microsoft. I know Susanna presented the slide, but just real quick. So my team is made up of about 10 energy PMs, and I cover predominantly the North and South American markets. So really kind of where Microsoft continues to expand its data center presence within, both North, Central, and South America. So my team does a combination of, focusing, working with our functional teams around sustainability options, renewable opportunities, distributed generation opportunities from our data center perspective. But then also we lead our team really leads the site selection process right? So where should Microsoft continue to invest in the next data center? You know, what city, what state, what country should we go to next? Where should we continue to expand our existing data center portfolio presence? And really at the end of the day, you know, and I've said this many times over my span here at Microsoft, but really energy does dictate where Microsoft continues to expand. And I'll kind of show some of that information here in a little bit here. But really, what I wanted to show first was really the three identities that we view at Microsoft in the energy space. Right? First, we view ourselves as a large customer, right? I mean, you just kind of look at some of the average loads that we consume at some of our hub regions, our hub and hero regions that we have identified over the U.S. and in Europe and Asia, and really, I mean, we're talking hundreds of megawatts of load, right? So, and with very high load factors above 90%. So really, when we look at our data center portfolio today, you know, we have over 160 data centers globally. When I started back in 2012, I mean, this number was 30, 40 data centers. And then when I look at the kind of the roadmap to the future, I mean, this number will be doubling, you know, probably every 3 to 5 years, you know, for the foreseeable future. So it's just something that, you know, data centers, we cannot build fast enough. And really, that's why I think that the site selection viewpoint that we take here at Microsoft is so important. Further, kind of what Susanna mentioned earlier, you know, that we have very high reliability needs, right? So our data centers need to have a design where we're up 99.999% of the time. So we call the 5 nines. And this design kind of consistently changes over time. And really, from our viewpoint, this is an area that we can work with our energy providers and really the grid as a whole, because we view, given the makeup, the structure of our data centers, we view that, that these can be very important to the grid, kind of where we site these data centers. Just given the fact that we typically have backup generation at these data centers, we have, you know, some type of battery technology at these data centers. So really, when we're looking for, you know, the high reliability resources around the grid, we're also working with our utilities around how we could potentially, you know, use our data centers kind of for the redundancy or the reliability of the grid itself. So kind of not only take from the grid, but have the opportunity to give back to the grid and make the grid more reliable with our presence there. Further, we want to work with utilities, right? I mean, we take the viewpoint, and prior to my career at Microsoft, I was an energy consultant for a number of years. And some of the companies that I represented were very large customers of energy as well. But they always tried to fight the utilities, right? They were always going with the utilities and trying to argue about rates and trying to argue about the tariff structure and so forth. We kind of take the opposite approach. We want to work with our utilities to identify opportunities for both, you know, kind of create win-win opportunities. Again, we feel that there's better partnership with utilities, right, if you work with them. So really, that's our viewpoint, and that's what we try to identify as we're continuing to expand and grow in our existing markets. Further, I mean, speed, right? Whenever we identify different markets and existing markets in which we're at, you know, we want to make sure that we can get something going fast, right? So we try to identify areas where the transmission system is relatively robust, that has adequate transmission capacity, maybe, you know, abundant transmission capacity, where we could put a data center within, you know, 18 months notice and start taking power down from the grid, you know, in those different areas. And also, again, and you'll hear this, you know, kind of throughout this message, but cost, right? I mean, cost is very important to data center growth, right? I think when you look at the overall structure, you know, ignore the server costs and so forth, you know, energy cost is something that, you know, we view that we could potentially control, right? Through some of our partnerships with our utilities, through some of the tariff structures that we negotiate and that we implement. that we're willing to take market-based risk in an opportunity for, lower potentially rate structures. So again, this is something that we work with our utilities, trying to generate these what we call partnership opportunities, to create these different types of tariffs or whatnot to really focus on, again, having a market-based rate, we call it, that is, that is really truly a marginal cost-based rate. So that's our large customer footprint viewpoint. We also view ourselves as kind of a supplier / renewable off-taker. Back in 2012, Microsoft made some commitments around renewable functions within Microsoft, carbon functions within Microsoft to really start greening up our portfolio. So through this, we look at executing, PPAs across the globe, where we're looking at different types of battery technology. Again, like I said, when we view our data centers as a whole, we view our data centers as opportunities to help give back to the grid, right? To green up our portfolio. So we're trying to work with utilities, work with, other market operators around how we can potentially, increase our battery technology, use longer lasting batteries, site in more specific territories that would be of a greater benefit to the grid. And then also, looking at, and again, kind of what will be discussed here in the future, later in the upcoming presentations, but, fuel cell opportunities and other types of technology like that could change the grid, right? There are markets where, the price that we pay and just the reliability of the grid kind of brings into question how we should be supplied, right? And I think, fuel cells or other type of technology like that could be something of great interest in those type of markets. And then lastly, we look at ourselves as a technology and solutions provider. And kind of what this means is, that there's a lot of different utilities out there who are trying to create smart grids, different cities who are looking at that kind of smart grid technology. So again, I think we try to look for that bigger partnership where, a Microsoft data center can come in and help, be the foundation, the kind of the fuel for supporting this, these smart cities where, technology is core, in those type of opportunities. So again, that's really the three identities that we see that we at Microsoft see ourselves in the energy space. So this next slide just shows kind of a brief overview, and I apologize, this is from last year, so it hasn't been updated. I haven't updated it since last year, but at this point in time, I just wanted to show like the magnitude in which we operate, right? Like I said, we have 160 data centers globally, and this is just a rough approximation of where our data centers exist today. And we have over 2 million miles of fiber, right, connecting all these data centers to make sure that they can talk to one another. And we have over 4 million servers, right, that really is powering our data center region. So again, I just wanted to show the scale that we're talking about. And like I said, I mean, this viewpoint is something that's going to be, as we continue to grow over the next several years, I mean, we'll be adding many more data centers and many more countries and states and cities, as we continue to expand and make our grid more reliable. So one of the questions I think Susanna asked initially was, what was Microsoft's walk, right, to sustainability? And like I mentioned earlier, so it started back in 2012. Microsoft was one of the first companies to come out and really make a commitment around carbon neutrality. At that point in time, I think we were probably one of the first companies to have a internal fee. I forget the exact what the fee was, but essentially it's $1 per metric fee that we charged the businesses within Microsoft to help make sure that we were offsetting all the carbon, all the scope 1, scope 2, and the scope 3 travel, right? So whenever a Microsoft employee takes a business trip or so forth, we were accounting for all that and tracking all that and making sure that we had enough carbon offsets to essentially track that on a continuous basis. So then in addition, in 2018, we made a commitment that 50% of our energy use from our data centers, right? So just specifically our data centers, which again, when you look at Microsoft's energy usage as a whole, probably 95%, 90 to 95% of our energy uses actually comes from our data centers itself. The other percent comes from our stores, comes from our office buildings across the globe and so forth. So like I said, back in 2018, we had a commitment that we were going to go make sure that we had enough PPAs in place to go offset 50% of our energy usage, our data center energy usage. And then we came out with a commitment not too long after that we were going to up the amount to 60% by 2020. And then shortly after that, we decided to go all the way, right? 100% of our data center energy usage is going to be coming from green resources by 2025. And then further, I think some of the announcements that recently were made is that in addition, we want to go further even yet, right? So we want to be carbon negative by 2030. So Microsoft recently made this pledge that, starting in July 20, that we would start, phasing in our internal carbon fee tax to cover, our scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, right? And then, like I said, the carbon tax itself. So I think in July 20, we started implementing a $15 per metric ton fee within all the businesses within Microsoft, right, to account for that and help make sure that we have enough of funds available, right, to go off and offset those carbon offsets. And then further, we're going to even a step further, right? We're going to remove all of our historical carbon emissions by 2050, right? So going back to when Microsoft was founded back in 1975, right? We want to go back and account for all the carbon, right, that we've created since 1975, and make sure that we have enough carbon offsets that essentially Microsoft will be a carbon negative company by 2050. And really one of the big, I think, one of the things that make us even more unique is that we've created this $1 billion climate innovation fund to help innovate and accelerate the global development of carbon reduction, capture, and removal technologies, right? So this is something that we're trying to put in place. We've already had a few programs that we're continuing to investigate, continuing to look at, to try to invest in these different types of technologies to really help make this plan come to fruition. And then lastly, I just really wanted to show sometimes graphs, charts help. I'm more of a visual person. So really this is kind of the current plan in place that Microsoft has that really shows how we're going to be carbon how we're going to get to that carbon negative position by 2030, right? So I think here it just shows that the blue essentially, this really shows all of our scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, and really since it's kind of forecasted historically, and then on a forecasted basis, and then really kind of what we've already done from a carbon emission offset perspective, and then kind of what we need to do to make us get to that carbon negative perspective. So again, this is we have a lot of work to do around the future, around how we actually develop and implement against this plan. But this is something that Microsoft is very excited. We're very excited to have the corporate presence here. You know, I think, you know, Brad Smith, Satya, Nadella, all people that are very supportive of this and want to make this a reality within Microsoft. So with that, I will stop sharing here, and I will throw the presentation back to you, Susanna.
Thank you very much, Jim. That was amazing, because that's exactly what our audience wanted to hear in terms of what's really kind of going behind the scene of the work that you are leading, and clearly we see the progress. So I am a visual gal, just like you can see why Jim and I get along. And I'll just share with the audience, the next 3 speakers is going to switch gear a little bit to go into a little bit more from a technical perspective. From what I basically see globally and working with pioneers such as Jim and his colleagues throughout Microsoft, this is a very exciting time. We are at the cusp of the fastest, deepest, and most profound disruption I have ever seen in the energy sector today, which I'm really glad that you are actually joining us today to kind of get a flavor of what is actually going to be happening. What Jim is basically talking about and what he and his team is actually continue to drive the growth. It's a global market phenomena, and with the net zero data center, which is zero carbon, zero emission, and zero waste, it's going to become one of the biggest driver in terms of the growth and causing the rupture point for energy. We have already seen battery and solar going down significantly, specifically actually 80%. And you can actually see a lot of us are continue to kind of analyze this trend. So with that, I actually think this is a really good time to introduce the next speaker, who's also a friend of mine, the founder of Alberto. Alberto brought to the world 20 years of energy experience, and every day I feel like he has been actively disrupting the market in the leadership and the entrepreneurial that he had. So without further ado, I know we're potentially running short of time with a lot of content and great speakers. So Alberto, I think I'm going to turn it over to you. So can you please take it away?
Okay. Thank you, Susanna. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And yes, on the topic of simultaneous, resilient, and sustainable data center, I would like to mention and to start with an example which is very special to me. This shows the data center in Seattle at the Advanced Energy Lab of Microsoft. And I'm very proud to have delivered the fuel cells for that data centers during my time at Solid Power. This is a showcase of a breakthrough design architecture called the Stark architecture. It started operation in 2017, and here you see with Washington Governor Inslee cutting the cord. Yes, the cord. It was not a tape cutting ceremony, it was a cord cutting ceremony to symbolize that the data center is not connected to the grid, to the power grid. And for a few years of operation now, there's been 0 outages due to the fuel cells. So it works perfectly. The data center is connected to the gas grid, and the fuel cell technology used can operate on natural gas, renewable natural gas or biogas, or hydrogen. And the next step is indeed to turn it into a carbon negative data center. And to do that, you just have to change the fuel, not the fuel cells. This architecture can be deployed with InfraPrime modular design, with a power duality at the rack level, at the pod level, or at the campus level. It has no diesel backup generators, and it is water positive. Not only zero water, net zero water, it is water positive. After leaving my previous company, I founded InfraPrime to drive and enable the transition to net zero data center. I'm very happy to collaborate with Susanna, a Climate 50 member, and I'm following her guidelines to work together on an open industry standard and metrics which can describe where data centers are positioned on the path to net zero. So I got to change slide. Okay. Now, let's see how simultaneous and resilient and sustainable data center can be built at affordable pricing, which, by the way, we call sustainable cost of ownership. I take here California as an example. We see there the combined impact of climate change and a grid which is not reliable, power grid. This combination leads to dangerous conditions for fire ignition. The result are announcements like this one, you see up there. Last week, the power was cut for 1 million residents in the Bay Area. This impacted not only residential, not only resident in residential area, also industrial customer and data centers. The same is happening now in Southern California. Well, I know this firsthand, as last time when we were preparing this webinar, I was on the call on the phone with Susanna, and she's one of those residents in the Bay Area being without power. So I know it directly. Not reliable and not 100% renewable energy source is not acceptable for data centers. And having backup generators running for days is not a solution. It's not even allowed by regulation. So the design we propose is to use the gas grid as a reliable source of renewable gas, like LNG and increasingly hydrogen. So if we implement the design which has been validated in the Microsoft Advanced Energy Lab, we can eliminate the diesel generators and we can generate carbon-free power on-site with the required reliability. The final result is on-site carbon-free generation, reliable power at affordable costs. And the key elements of the solution are the specific design and architecture of the fuel cells themselves, and the reliability of the gas grid in comparison to the power grid. Our two next guests today will speak in more details about those two elements. The next example, and the last one, looking at the time, is on the East Coast this time. And this is a design with on-site solar and storage. Here the grid is still the primary source of energy, but it's possible to install up to 2 megawatt of solar PV for free, really, no joke, at zero cost, and add battery storage like the Megapack from Tesla, which can store up to 3 megawatt hour of energy. This gives you sustainable cost of ownership, zero emissions, and you avoid also grid energy expense. As at InfraPrime, we always implement power duality in our designs. You will see here two IPM modules with solar and storage on one side and the grid as separate power connections to each module, guaranteeing resiliency and uptime availability. You also see on the bottom the sustainability calculator. I mentioned before that we are working on industry standards and metrics to describe where a data center is on its path to net zero. This kind of software and monitoring makes this positioning visible to all our customers. So with this and with this example of sustainable cost of ownership, I would like to give it back to you, Susanna.
Thank you, Alberto. I also want to acknowledge your commitment to climate change and action, that every participant today, when you joined, InfraPrime is actually sponsoring 1 additional tree to be planted. So thank you very much, Alberto and InfraPrime. Our next speaker, Olivier, and I met in, I guess, Stockholm, Sweden was the last time we got together, right? Correct, Olivier?
That's correct. London and Stockholm. Yeah.
Yes, London and Stockholm. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it was London as well, where Maxine is today. Well, Olivier has a very impressive background, and I guess I'll let the audience read about it. He is exactly the right person for us to actually have on this panel, because we want to know, what is this thing called fuel cell and why do I pay attention to it? Why is Microsoft even tracking it and be able to actually do some of the work that you do in terms of keeping the data center up and not have one downtime incident? That's very impressive. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about it? So take it away, Olivier.
Yes, Susanna, thanks for this very kind introduction. And I share my screen and hope it should work well with you. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you might wonder, what is a fuel cell? A fuel cell is my passion, but it's not an explanation for you. Basically, it is a battery that never runs out of power. All you need to do is to feed it with fuel. So when fuel cells were discovered in the mid of the 19th century, they were called gas batteries. So like with batteries, there are many different kinds of fuel cells, and solid power is using the ceramic one, which is on the bottom here to see, for various reasons, because they are very efficient and also very flexible in operation. They even can go the other way around. So in terms of transforming electricity from the gas, they also can make gas out of electricity. So they are reversible. Now, as long as you feed the fuel cell, it works silently, like the battery, without mechanical parts in movement and with the highest conversion efficiency, and they produce DC electricity. DC electricity is exactly what a server uses to make its calculation. Again, an argument why they are so efficient. So compared to conventional generators that use combustion technologies, fuel cells have three key advantages. So no combustion means no pollution, no NOx, no SOx, no particulate matter. They are truly sustainable for that reason. They are also resilient. They have high efficiency at any size and are modular. So having this, you can scale them to any needs of power that you have. You just take the number of modules that it takes to get there. They are also reversible. They can be used to store power. They can be operated in both directions, gas to power and power to gas. That's basically what fuel cells can do. Now, produced with renewable power, renewable gas is an excellent long-term energy storage solution. And Jim, Susanna, I would just like to explain and illustrate that a bit with this example that we have. So if we use lithium-ion batteries, we will need to operate a data center of 1 megawatt for 1 hour. We would need 3,800 kilograms of lithium-ion battery to run this. If we use hydrogen, we only need a 60 kilogram. So we have approximate factor of 60 in between of what we need to convert there. Now, the customer always has a choice, of course. And if you look also at the cost side, I think it's also important to see that lithium ion, they have a $150 per kilowatt hour cost in terms of providing it through this technology, or the hydrogen is 6 cents today. Both technologies will become cheaper. The lithium ion will go in the direction of a $50 per kilowatt hour, and the hydrogen will also decrease by a factor of 50%, factor of 2, to get in the 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour range in the next period. Now, lithium-ion batteries, they have the justification clearly for short duration, but as soon as you start to have longer operating needs, let's say days or weeks, then you would like definitely to go to the hydrogen, because then the fuel cell that is the link between the hydrogen and the electricity pays off. And so on that respect, we have the overall technology, the fuel cell technology and conversion technology, that is still today not sufficiently known. If you look at the products of solid power down here, we start to have multiple units, but is this going to happen, or is this a lab thing? Now, the answer is given in Europe. The European Union is currently launching the new Green Deal at a scale of $400 billion with a support for both hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. Those 400 billion euro will be invested over the next 10 years. And the launch of this new Green Deal and the Clean Hydrogen Alliance was on 8th of July this year, with more than 100 CEOs of different companies participating, including the ones from Shell, Siemens, and Bosch, for example, joining that and making this new industrial reality happening. In this respect, we see a real dynamic, and the European member states are working together to implement also an infrastructure to make hydrogen happen. So there will be various sources of hydrogen going into pipelines and delivering hydrogen not only to the end use of electrification, which is one, or building heat and power, but also for feedstock, transportation, and other industrial uses like steel. So out of that, what is the lessons for us? We see that the cost of the fuel cells will come down. We are already through various projects that ramping up the volume. We are like wind and solar and batteries, we are on the cost down curve. We are already in that second sector here, and we see that we are still on a rather steep slope of going down. So Solid Power, together with InfraPrime and other industry-leading data center partners, will demonstrate this technology of fuel cells in a combined 180 kilowatt prime power module, targeting specifically edge applications. The fuel cells do not only operate on hydrogen, but also on methane from biogas or conventional gas sources. The specific module will use 30 fuel cells running independently, providing thereby a very high availability, the 5.9 that Jim is looking for. We can provide that. So several of those modules can be combined to give larger power on the level that a data center requires. One of the goals of this project is to define the basis of an open industry standard for the fuel cells in data centers. This is InfraPrime's role in this project. So to build out of the bricks of the fuel cells a complete bridge to the data center with their own architecture and provide this standard to the entire industry. This will allow us to get the speed and momentum for both cost reduction and large-scale deployment. And with this, Susanna, I would like to give it back to you.
Thank you, Olivier. Congratulations to you. I guess congratulations to all of us for the hard work in terms of being innovative. And I'm really glad to see that the results are showing excellent proof to clients such as Microsoft and others. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a very exciting time for you, for your passion, and no pun intended. I think the fuel is just right there. So with that, I think this is perfect timing for me to introduce the last speaker. I am so pleased, and I want to give a very warm welcome to Bryan Batson for you to joining us from Sun Company Gas. You have an amazing career. We make a joke that maybe I should be reading every word about your bio today. Because your accomplishment is just second to none in the utility industry and being a disruptive entrepreneur. So, but without further ado, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what your current responsibilities are and your work on the organizations. That would be extremely helpful. So please take it away, Bryan, and glad to have you with us today.
Susanna, thank you so much for allowing me to join you. And I look forward to being in this group today. I'm sure some of the folks who were signing up for this conference wondered, well, what's the utility guy going to talk about with all these great innovators and scientists and experts in their field? And what I wanted to talk to you today a little bit is about renewable natural gas. And Jim, I love the fact that you said you're a lover and not a fighter with utilities, so very much appreciate that. And we do look forward to working with whoever out there needs utility services or help. But, you know, we're not an innovator on a lot of ways, but when you look at resiliency and reliability as a natural gas distribution system, we are that. And we have to be there for our customers. When the polar vortex slips down, we need to be ready to serve. As you look at these data centers, and Susanna, you are almost an Energizer bunny to me. Your energy could probably run a data center, but I would say that when you look at this hydrogen concepts. They're not new, but they're perfected. And I think you can look at RNG that way. If you look at the definition of natural gas, it's really just happens in nature. So it comes from sort of Mother Nature's breakdown process. And it's collecting the waste, and you can see the cycle. The thing that you need to count on your utilities for is taking the RNG and making it pipeline quality. And that's one of the things we focused on, is making sure the states that we operate in either have tariffs or have tariffs submitted so that we can move RNG on our system. You should not know the difference of whether you've got RNG or regular natural gas in your pipeline. And oftentimes this is done on paper, and Jim, I know you're an expert on that, and that you're actually buying RNG somewhere else. It's going into a system and you're taking it off, but you really get the full benefit. This methane will go into the atmosphere if it's not captured. And I think, Jim, it really fits with Microsoft's commitment to being net negative. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But RNG is not new. So I want people to feel comfortable. There's a lot of new things out there, but RNG has been around since before I started with the gas company. And that was back in '84. So in '82, you had RNG plants. Since that time, there's about 130 RNG plants out there. And so if you look at that, you think, well, that's not a lot. There are scheduled to be 110 over the next 10 years. And so the folks on here presenting are actually talking about what's coming. And Microsoft is always out on the edge. You're always trying to be sure you're leading, and you're leading here because what's happening is the RNG is really picking up because of that fact that it's so good for the environment to capture this methane and turn it into energy and not let it escape. They've done several studies. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency actually looked at this, and they say the U.S. could support 13,000 biogas facilities. So America's ability to turn more and more of its waste stream into gas to actually generate energy is just beginning. So if you look at that, you really get the whole cycle of life where it comes around, and our customers won't know the difference. The customer won't know. The investment community, the ESG community are pushing everyone to make sure you're focused on carbon. Susanna, you're an expert at that, and you advise the UN, you advise companies, and we see that here as a natural gas company, that there's a push for that, making sure we're as tight on our system and as reliable as we can be. And we focus on that. But you want to wonder, well, why are people really interested in RNG? And then I think you'll see here from the slide that I've just put up, let's look at the difference when you're looking at carbon intensity ratings. If you looked at a diesel fuel scoring out at 102, that's a positive. So that is actually carbon or pollution into the atmosphere. If you took that same engine, in this case, I'm talking engine, it would have a similar effect in a hydrogen fuel cell. You can see as you come down the chain towards RNG, landfill gas, you start to get much, much lower. But when you get to the dairy gas, you actually get a very large negative. That gas is escaping into the atmosphere. I can tell you we have several cutting edge companies here in Atlanta. Compressed natural gas is a vehicle for fuel, and UPS drives numerous here. The headquarters here in Atlanta, they drive compressed natural gas vehicles, and they've contracted for RNG to be run in those vehicles. So you can see they immediately get a negative carbon footprint around the delivery here in the metro Atlanta area. So RNG is sort of just beginning. It's just catching on. It still has the ability to grow. I can tell you that you're going to see more and more of these plants. There will be commercial folks who build them. It won't just be utilities. It won't just be Atlanta Gas Light or Chattanooga Gas. It won't be your local utility. There'll be commercial operators who are trying to find out how to build them, where they can put this gas into the pipeline. And we're going to make sure that when it gets in the pipeline that it's reliable and that it has all the attributes that are needed for it to be replace the gas that you're asking to be burned. So it's really a way to be cutting edge. And I think this webinar, Susanna, from everybody I've seen, you got a utility guy. You may not always consider utility guys cutting edge. I was laughing, Jim, when I thought about you probably have developers and coders who have not been alive as long as I've been in the natural gas industry. But RNG will grow. It will become more useful, and it will help the planet. So every step, every molecule that we use, it's not escaping, is put back and generating energy to make sure these data centers are available all the time. I could tell you as a man who just had a wedding, and I know my daughter and wife have looked at least 600 pictures. And so you will need many more data centers before your time is over with, if the Batson household has anything to do like that. So Susanna, I'll stop. I know you need some time for some questions, and I appreciate you having me here. It's so good to be here with these folks, and I learned a lot today, and look forward to talking with you if you have questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's absolutely a pleasure to be able to, for you to find time to join us in today's webinar. You are right on in terms of your bet, in terms of how you see the puck is going to be. Adoption of clean energy is growing exponentially worldwide, and the disruption is just now inevitable, because you heard it directly. Microsoft is fully committed with the ambition and execution, and they will deliver upon their goals in terms of being carbon negative. Not only their direct consumption, but also the indirect consumption and entire value food chain. They are very responsible for it. And I cannot believe they're actually even going to go back to the day of founding to basically going to pay back from the first carbon emission that they have since the company founding for Microsoft, which is really astounding in terms of a responsible citizen. So on behalf of the UN and the Climate Action Group, we really bow to you all. So thank you again, Jim. So you all have also listened to the three industry experts, Alberto, Olivier, and Bryan. So start preparing yourself in this transformation of this new energy system. This new clean energy generation ecosystem, I call it, is going to be larger than the last cloud disruption that we all have experienced. And this clean energy disruption is profound, because it's not only trying to accomplish the economic gain, just like what Alberto said, it's really a sustainability cost of ownership. So we're really, everything that we do today, we should be responsible. I'm not too sure actually watching 11 hours of Netflix is actually good for the environment, but I'll let you decide for that, because the energy that you're actually consuming can be conserved. And speaking for somebody who had no power for the last 48 hours because my utility shut the entire grid down, which is pretty astounding that happened to Silicon Valley people. You all need to try to get an understanding, because only when you actually reach the understanding and be a critical citizen, you can then do a favor yourself to be the social citizen and be able to maximize the extraordinary benefits of this clean energy ecosystem. So we are all very friendly here. So I would encourage you all to connect with us, connect with Maxine, and we'll try to kind of like get to know you all and whatnot. So perhaps I can ask the panelists to give a 1-minute takeaway for the audience today. So Jim, how about we start with you?
Yes, thank you, Susanna. Yeah, I mean, so just a quick 1-minute takeaway. I mean, for us, it's, again, I shared out kind of Microsoft's, ambitions to get to carbon negative, right, by 2050. And, I think in order for us to do that, and in order for us to do it in a cost-effective manner, right, we need partners, right? We cannot go at this alone. And that's why I think, all the experts here on the panel, but also, like I said, working with our utility providers, right? I know historically we've always tried to, specifically for our existing utilities, but also for other utilities that we are considering, partnering with, or having data centers with in the future, intervening and being part of the utilities, IRP, or their integrated resource plan, to better understand like how someone like Microsoft can, not only come in and maybe use some of the behind the meter data center technology, for the betterment of the grid, but then also how data centers, right, can kind of play into this smart grid technology and these smart future cities and stuff like that. So again, I think the biggest takeaway is that, you know, we have a lot on our plate, and we're going to need a lot of partners, I think, you know, as we continue to march forward and really implement and really, you know, continue to develop this plan. So again, thank you, Susanna, for all the fine, for this great opportunity, and thank you all the panelists.
Thank you, Jim. Let's go to you, Bryan. What is the 1 minute takeaway that you'd like to share with us?
I think just the fact that RNG is not new. You can feel comfortable that you can rely on it, and that we realize it will grow, and unfortunately the cost will come down, and renewable energy is important. Natural gas serves a very strong purpose in allowing renewable energy to continue to grow and to serve more and more of the US market, and it is able to back it up. And then as we add RNG into that mix, you again continue to take methane out and actually turn it into an energy source that's backing up a very reliable system. So utilities are here to help, and we're not the only answer. There's also commercial folks who could help you, but our job is to move the product to you safely and reliably, so that you have the resilience that your customers have come to expect. Thank you for letting me participate today.
Thank you again, Bryan. Olivier, let's go to you in Switzerland.
Yes, last week I organized the world's largest solid oxide cell conference in Lucerne, Switzerland, all virtual, by the way. So we are good customers of the server industry. The news of it is that fuel cells and hydrogen technologies are happening. That's what we can say. And we are not the only ones. Solid Power is not the only one, but the Electrolyzer and Fuel Cell Forum could show that there are many actors investing heavily. And this is what is required now to bring down the cost, similar to what was required 20 years ago on the solar and the wind power scene. Now, we see that. And what is important for this industry is to have a standard, a common standard that all the vendors can develop for and supply to, so that we get the economies of scale rapidly. And in this respect, the open standard that is going to be developed by InfraPrime to deliver fuel cells into a suitable architecture will be very helpful to the overall industry and allow us to accelerate the deployment on a global scale. That's it. Thanks, Susanna.
Thank you, Olivier. Passion and pace. I think we are friends for life. Okay. Alberto, can you please share with the audience your 1 minute takeaway, please? And thank you for planting the trees for all of us today.
I will. I was counting, so I know how many. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, my summary is that the transition to net zero and to sustainable data center is not a question of, as we have seen, of technology. Technologies are available and the costs are coming down. It is not even a question of availability of clean power and renewable power. Also, those costs are coming down, and it is really growing at a faster pace at a pace that is fast enough to sustain the growth. The challenge will be to have that energy at the right time, at the right place. And here, RNG is one of the optimal solutions, because you can have that renewable power where you want. So if it's not a question or an issue, the technology, the clean power is available already where you want it, then it is a choice. It's a choice of every business, it's a choice of every citizen, and it's a choice that we can make every single day with every single purchase as a private person or as a company. And from InfraPrime side, it's our goal to give you the information in terms of metrics and the solutions in terms of designs and standard, so that everybody can complete or at least make progresses on this path towards net zero. That's my takeaway. Thank you, Susanna, and thank you to everybody. It really was a pleasure to be here with you all.
Well, I thank all the audience for attending, but this is just the beginning of the journey. For those of you who actually like to hear more about Net Zero Data Center, Alberto and I actually very early, 6:30 a.m. tomorrow Pacific or 9:30 in the Eastern, we are actually going to be speaking with the Danish data center industry. Many of the net zero, I have to admit, is already implemented throughout the Nordics. We're blending in the design with the entire community to really share a symbiotic relationship between what a net zero data center can bring to the community and vice versa, just like what Bryan shared earlier in terms of the waste from the community can actually be a source of the fuel. So if you'd like to hear more about it, please join us tomorrow. It will be pre-recorded, so please go to the Danish data center industry. Very fine people there. We like them a lot. And then it's also tomorrow for some of you who are very interested in, from a research perspective, for the academic research. I will be speaking at the UCLA Resilience Institute of Sustainability. So Maxine and I are continued our journey in terms of lowering the research. There are some very excellent professors and academia who's also behind this clean energy evolution. So we see a lot of the work that can come out there. So if you'd like to join us, both of the sessions actually available tomorrow. And Alberto will be speaking at DCD Europe with a lot of different Europeans in November. And he is an amazing speaker, and he will be able to actually share his vision and a lot more update with other European folks. In addition, for some of you who would like to read more, in terms of white paper and publications and reference architecture, please do go to infraprime.com, just like what Maxine said. I think Alberto and Maxine did a really good job in cataloging that. And then for some of you who would like to track my action in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goal and what that means for the data center and the ICT sector, and how some of the experiences that we have done could be beneficial to you, please do not pioneer on my mistakes. You know, you might as well take what we have learned over the years and be able to just, you know, gain from it. So feel free to, you know, attend any of these resource guide. So with that, I think we're coming up on time. Sorry, we ran over about 1 or 2 minutes. I thank everyone for your participation today. We could not have done it without all of you being here, and we hope that we will have a chance to meet in person very soon. So stay healthy and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye now.